Hi, welcome to another session on our Rewiring Your Beliefs World Summit. My name is Dr. Fleet Mall, your co-host for the session, and I'm really happy to be here today with Brian Vaszily. Welcome, Brian.
Well, hi, Fleet. How are you?
It's good to see you again, and we're really happy to have you on this summit. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm going to share your bio, and then we'll jump right in. Sound good?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Brian Vaszily is a renowned leader, researcher, and advocate in healthy aging and longevity with over 20 years of experience. He's the founder of the RYBel.com, a leading health platform with over 500,000 members dedicated to empowering individuals with evidence-based natural solutions to avoid and overcome disease, live long, and thrive. Brian also hosts the Art of Anti-Aging's widely respected Healthy Aging Summits, which have positively impacted millions of lives. In addition to his work in healthy aging, Brian is the founder of Purity Woods, one of today's fastest growing certified organic skincare and supplement companies. Throughout his career, he has collaborated closely with top MDs and researchers, distilling their insights into actionable steps that are both clear and compelling. Brian's influence extends beyond health. He is an internationally acclaimed author, speaker, and life and business coach. He's also the founder of IntenseExperiences.com, a leading site for positive transformation, and OneWorldOneBook.com, a global book club uniting readers to discuss great literature and support charitable causes. Obviously, you're quite a Renaissance figure with many diverse interests and activities. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I do have to note a couple of those last ones you put out there. Those are past ventures that were great adventures. But Intense Experiences is retired, although people will find all that material still out there. Yeah, One World, One Book. That was an interesting adventure, but I don't believe people will find that one anymore. However, the Art of Anti-Aging.com and Purity Woods are alive and thriving. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. Wow, you really went into my background there. That's awesome.
All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that. So, as we get started with our conversation here about your work and about the art of anti-aging, I wonder if you could give us just a little bit of your origin story. I think it's always helpful for the audience to see, how did you end up in this whole world of longevity and anti-aging?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I am currently 54, and you can probably slice my life down the middle almost. And the first half was really quite rough by anyone's definitions, Fleet. So I grew up in inner city Chicago in a pretty rough neighborhood. I lost friends to gangs. And, it was just kind of an environment where I always had to watch my back on the outside, but far more, well, traumatic. It was the fact that my father was a good man until around my age of 9 years old. He then became severely alcoholic and severely abusive to me, to my sister, to my mother. And I can get into the what and why of that. He had a fascinating life, but a very hard life. And he did not deal effectively with some very serious traumas he faced. He lost his first wife. They got into an argument, and he watched as she stepped out of the car angry, and that truck hit her and killed her. He lost his son from his previous marriage to my mother when I was just 3. I didn't know that half brother, who was hit by a car while riding a bike and killed. He was a World War II vet, spy for the United States, who was in Germany during World War II, seeing all of that. And he interestingly fell in love with a woman who turned out to be a Russian spy, and they were going to get married. And then one day she was just disappeared, and he never saw her again. So fascinating life, a lot of good in his life too, I'm sure, but he didn't deal effectively with these traumas and carried it over to us, by hitting the bottle and then, being rather abusive to us. So I dealt with that for years. And then to his credit, he finally did kick the bottle, Fleet. But then he spent the last 10 years of his life essentially dying inside of more than outside of hospitals. So I witnessed the medical care system even as a older child and young man. I watched my mom almost end up on the bed next to him because she fought this medical care system extensively for years. They were essentially experimenting on my father with drugs and different approaches and making him suffer. And worst of all, what people hear about medical mistakes is quite true and beyond. She fought and fought and caught so many mistakes. So I was there with her. My sister was there with her during this period a lot of times. He spent the last 6 years of his life in a hospital, three hospitals, really dying. And, I just experienced, a lot of education slash trauma during that period as well. So, when I'm a young man at that point, I became a very young father myself. And, to my wife at that time, and my credit, we did push through and go to, college full time. I went to college full time while I worked full time and raised a baby, and so did she. And it was a really rough years. I was super poor. I lived in with my wife at the time and our baby in a studio apartment where I had to choose between keeping the lights on another month or food on the table sometimes. Couldn't afford a bed. We slept on my twin mattresses and box springs from my youth for a while there, and mice would come and wake me up in the middle of the night. Rough. So, long story short on this is that I experienced a lot of depression and anxiety in my young years, and there's one single factor that kept me alive because I had suicidal thoughts that kept me alive, and in fact, they are the reason I'm thriving today, and that is powerful women. Women have played a monumental role in my life, more so than they do in all of our lives, of course, starting with our own mothers, right? But in my life, I have them to thank for sitting here talking to you today. And that includes, I'm going to tear up, but I won't. I have a wonderful mother, an angel of a mother, still, thank goodness, here with us today. A grandmother who's still with us. She's 104 years old. A sister who is wonderful, and so on. And certain teachers and others, they all happen to be women. So now, fast forward just a bit. So I am done with college and have a baby, at home and my wife. And so I need to get a job. My first job, real job, really, I guess I should say, second real job was in communications for a company on the other side, a pharmaceutical corporation in the pharmaceutical industry. I will just say that. And I will just say this, that all of people's frustrations and concerns slash fears about the pharmaceutical industry are largely true and beyond. People don't know the half of it. I saw a lot in that role, and I couldn't wait to get out, but I had to maintain in order to put food on the table, et cetera, for quite some time. So, do a little fast forwarding again, and way back when, now we're talking 20 years plus ago, a doctor and I saw what he was trying to do, and he and I started having some conversations. He's a very controversial figure. I'm always a bit uneasy about bringing this up because people love him or hate him. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about a gentleman by the name of Joe Mercola, who way back then, had a very, small following, but I knew the message he was trying to put out there, which was essentially take control of your own health. And this is long before folks like, most folks out there, who are in this wonderful space today where we're trying to empower people with evidence-based solutions to look, feel their best, live long, avoid disease. This is long before that. This was at the very start of the internet, I guess you can almost say, because it really was. At least the prevalence of the internet. And I was with Mercola, Joe, and I for 4.5 years. And before I parted ways with him, and we grew that. And so I was then exposed to, during the course of all that, a lot of wonderful health and wellness MDs and practitioners who were trying to break free of the conventional mode. And so for years I helped others behind the scenes, and then as you alluded to, I became more of a personal development brand almost myself for a while. It was called Intense Experiences, and did quite well with all of that. Delved more so into the emotional and mental aspect of things, and learned a lot there. Had a big best-selling book out of that called The 9 Intense Experiences. It's still out there today. But I was at a crossroads, Fleet, about 2018, 17, 18. I was at a good crossroads. I can make different choices where I'm going to take my life, but propelled to do one thing, because I was watching, Fleet, as some very pervasive nonsense myths were impacting these women who had been so powerful in my own life. And these myths are the aging myths. And we can dive into that because they're one of the biggest issues out there, period, if you were going to talk honestly about healthy aging and longevity. And so these very otherwise powerful women I saw as these pervasive myths were negatively impacting them in a very physical way in some ways. The idea that getting older, when you hit 40, it equals becoming undesirable, incapable, doomed to suffering and disease, and you're over the hill. Down you go. Now, all of those years, Fleet, where I was working closely with so many different, highly respectable, wonderful MDs who are integrative health, as they call it, and natural health approaches, trying to incorporate that, I discovered the exact opposite is the truth. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even beyond, ought to be the best years of people's lives from a physical, emotional, mental standpoint. So there was this big rift, and I was watching it impact even these powerful women in my own life. The belief that it's downhill and the fact based on an incredible amount of evidence that it ought to be the best years. And I'm like, I know exactly what I'm going to do in honor of my mother, in honor of my sister, in honor of these powerful women. I'm going to start an organization, theartofantiaging.com is what it's now called. And I'm just going to put out all of these evidence-based facts in a very easy to comprehend and put into action way for people, from all of my peers in the industry, from all of the researchers, et cetera. And that's the start of the artofantiaging.com. And as you kindly noted, it's now grown to over 500,000, folks who can go there, sign up for our newsletter, get these insights. And I'm honored. And it's driven by, as you can hear, a passion and a mission. So I'm so humbled, really, to be able to reach a lot of people like that. Thanks for asking. Yeah, and I hope that was somewhat condensed.
Well, you did a great job with that. Your passion is palpable and incredibly moving, and I'm so glad we began there with your story. It is so powerful, and so you spoke about these myths that you became aware of that were impacting these amazing women in your own life, and this really ignited that passion of the work you're doing today. So, and these myths become these culturally reinforced myths become beliefs that we internalize and then show up in ways that are actually undermining our health and our longevity and so forth. So, what are some of these key? If you had to name two or three of these myths or beliefs, what are some of the key beliefs you feel that many of us have internalized to our own detriment?
Absolutely. Well, first, want to note that various research has been done in this area. One of the most prominent researchers, her name is Becca Levy, and she did research earlier in the 2000s showing that your perception, your belief about aging has a monumental impact on your physical health. In fact, those who had negative or embraced mentally negative stereotypes about aging had a 7.5-year reduction in lifespan versus those who had more positive impression of aging. And that about nails it. People look, feel, and look and feel less good than they ought to, and live shorter lives than they ought to because of mindset in this regard. And it is when people ask, and I know they're looking for dietary steps, often exercise steps, and those are super vital. But when people ask me, what's the worst of the worst, or they want to hear the physical toxins, which is a monumentally big problem. But I will say that's easy. It's mindset about this because it is so prevalent in our society. Look at any entity, Hollywood and other forms of media. You would think that if you came from a different planet and you came here and you just watched our media, you would think that the vast majority of the population is somewhere in their 20s, and all the women are, of course, by conventional standards, beautiful. And you would think that women in their 40s, 50s, 60s must be a very small segment of society if you just looked at the media. It's a big place that it starts, or one of the primary places that this myth is pushed. I will also tell you, though, that because of this myth of aging, all these big institutions that we have to be very cautious of, big food, big pharma, big cosmetics and personal care products industries, they play and prey on this myth in a very massive way. and take advantage, frankly, of people and make, untold billions, if not trillions of dollars doing so. So it starts, and I always like to go very personal with people and just say, please, in a very mindful way, in a very unstressful way, please truly, ideally writing this out, because maybe we don't all know, we ought to all know that by writing it out, it doesn't matter if it sounds good on paper, that's not the point, it's just for you. But writing out what you really believe getting older means and examining that closely. Be honest with yourself. Do you believe that you are meant to, which biologically and chronologically we're seeing you should live normally past 97? You should. You should, even if you do many things, not all things even, but many things right, you should. So those are the years, maybe late 80s, 90s, where truly you might start slowing down. And then, of course, in the 90s, you will start slowing down. It's almost inevitable, but you ought to live even past that. Okay. But the question is that you ought to ask yourself, what do I believe, being 40, 50, 60, 70, 80s means? What does that mean? Do you believe that means vibrancy deeply? And the best years of your life, or do you embrace the myth? And there's no judgment here, but do you embrace the myth to some extent that it's time for you to start slowing down, looking unattractive, feeling less energetic? Getting sick is more common. Those are all not true, but it's very important to assess your beliefs on that, because you cannot achieve, honestly, any other step if you have this massive internal emotional block in your way. You could do the best diet of all time, exercise your butt off, avoid every physical toxin out there, so on and so forth. If you have that belief, your belief is telling your brain, time to die. Time to start dying now. Haha, party store says over the hill on all these napkins and balloons. And how much do you really embrace that? It's not true. I will swear by that to everybody. And again, at the Art of Anti-Aging, just like you here, we try to share with people facts that is not true at all. You really don't need to slow down until, again, perhaps, and here I might be being a little too liberal, but perhaps your later 80s. Certainly, I would say your 90s. But even then, you ought to live about 107 years old if we do many things, not all things, just many things right.
Wow. Well, I've been involved in mind body work most of my adult life. I became a meditator in my late 20s or maybe mid 20s. And, but I have to admit that, and today I'm really focused on optimizing my health and well being and my mindset around aging. I'm 74, so it's become ever more important. But even up until, recent years, I have to admit, I would sometimes hear myself saying things like, youth is wasted on the young, getting old sucks, things like this.
Yeah.
I had allowed those ideas about aging to influence me. One thing that did help me was over the past decade. You hear something like 60's the new 40, 70's the new 50. And, I started embracing that. And that was kind of a helpful meme. And I started embracing that. Today, I'm really focused on optimizing my health and well-being. And I go through a whole routine, not only in terms of body mind work in the morning, but also some affirmations around. Interesting, you said 107. Mine is 108, healthy, wealthy, enlightened, thriving, and serving. And I'm doing that little mantra, right, to envision the possibility of living a long life and while being healthy and prospering and serving and having a meaningful life, right? So I'm really glad that I've embraced that. But what you're talking about, the power of these beliefs, this is what this summit is all about. And we've known this for a long time. Psychologically, we know it neurobiologically that our beliefs, whether they're conscious or unconscious, really drive how we interpret life, how we show up in life, and the results we create for ourselves in life. So it's just critically important. So once one sort of awakens to the untruth of these myths, and that we can live a long, healthy life, by doing a few of the right things and embracing a healthy lifestyle and natural solutions to deal with issues we may have to deal with. Um, and then you kind of open up to that world. There's this plethora of information today. I mean, before you back before the internet, there was very limited information, and it was curated by big pharma and big food, et cetera, et cetera. So we got limited information. Today, there's just this plethora of information, and it's all over the map, and it can be very confusing. And some of it's accurate, and some of it's maybe not so accurate, and a lot of promises and so forth. So how do we filter this and find our way through? I know going to your artofantiaging.com website is one good place to start. But other than that, what kind of filters do we use to find our way through to maybe an accurate signal on the real truth around things that can help us enhance our well-being and age in a healthy way, and both longevity and health span?
Yeah, no. Well, it's either your event or mine. That's it. No, nothing. I'm kidding. But your event is a great start. And the word trust comes to mind. I do hope, as many people have embraced, I'm doing this for the right reasons, and so trust is important. However, a step before that. Let me go two steps before that to answer that question. You brought up something regarding yourself, which I appreciate you opening the door on yourself like that. And it is one of the most fascinating and important aspects to understand about ourselves. We tend to believe, and we have for eons believed, that our brain controls us, right?
Mhm.
And only in recent years, due to a lot of really cool research, fascinating research, has it come to really strong light that just as much we have to be in control of our brain. It's the old brain is best friend, worst enemy thing, right? And the brain can really do some severe damage to you if you let it. The beautiful thing is that there are so many ways to, and it's kind of weird talking about this when you think about it, because it's, using your brain to control your brain. Obviously, it's our executive function, but for the sake of conversation, to grab more control over your brain through many means that you teach and have taught really well. It's modern forms as well as traditional of meditation, even nature walking are so important to center yourself, get away from this mass and true epidemic of chronic stress that messes with our brains, our health, our lives, and stops us. So that's a huge one, but it's important to get control of your brain. I used to think that things like affirmations are a bunch of fluff. And now there's a lot of evidence on affirmations, simple affirmations, because what's going on? You're telling your brain this is the way it is, and your brain's saying, "Oh, okay," So by simply getting a firm grasp of your own beliefs about what aging means, and it's a-okay. In fact, it's likely if you discover you have negative impressions of what getting older means, it's okay. And most people do. I still do. You noted you do, right? So this is not a one-time deal. You routinely, try to visit that. And then just one of many ways is simply to write out the truth. Getting older to me means these are going to be the best years of my life. These are going to be the healthiest years of my life. If I have a health condition, I am going to improve. This once sounded like fluff to me until I dug in and realized, and a lot of research has been done on this, that these are telling your brain, I'm in control and this is how it's going to be. And it's going to be wonderful. My health is going to improve, physically, emotionally, mentally. So that's a very important thing to note in context of the question you're asking me, because there is a lot of health noise out there. And as long as we are susceptible to our emotions, our thoughts owning us and controlling us and whipping us around, all of these institutions will be able to maintain this invisible, sometimes visible, but most often invisible control of us. The grocery store industry will be able to push our choices without us knowing it to certain things at certain levels on the shelf with the pretty music that we're not thinking about playing for a reason in the background and so forth. The drug industry will continue to do what it does and make so many people believe drugs are healthcare, etc. If we are susceptible to that. And we're susceptible to that when our emotions are not in our control. There's no bad emotion or good emotion. It's simply about, do you recognize and more so own them, or are they owning you? So when we're susceptible, um, that is when all this noise and all the infinite now amount of health information can harm us. And it does. I've seen it, and it's also one of the biggest issues out there now. There is this overwhelm of health advice, I'm putting quotes around that, from every quarter today, blogs, podcasts, social media, especially TV, magazines, still so forth, right? And this is a problem. This is a big problem when you are susceptible, because whoever words something well or catches your eye with the right image, or works on your emotions in a certain way, will grab your attention, and you'll be a passive consumer, and you will passively say, man, that sounds really good. That supplement with ABC, including, by the way, a bunch of synthetic junk in it, sounds like it's going to be a huge difference in my life. And you get sucked in, and social media is designed to suck you in and never let you go and keep you clicking and scrolling forever, including so much of it about health advice, quote unquote, again. So again, when it starts with, just like everything starts with, having that ownership of your emotions, be they, stress or joy or any emotion at all, having that ownership, which is why your event is so wonderful, because it's so much about that, right? And that ownership, therefore, you're able to see, and properly, let's put it that way. You're, from the heart as well as your mind, you're able to see far more properly and make informed choices that are truly good for you long term, not little dopamine hit type of choices, but long-term choices. You're able to detect, who can I trust? What organizations can I more so trust? Wait a minute, which ones I better back off and check out, what else has this organization put out? You're better able to make informed choices. Is this based on a variety of different experiences and evidence? Or are they really just about trying to sell me something, fly by night, short term here, that is the most vital aspect to cut through the noise, is to have no noise inside of yourself that's clouding your view.
Well, I'm really glad that you're expressing both, doing that work to clarify what beliefs am I holding, and seeing where, obviously, if they're negative beliefs, knowing that they're going to have this impact, so working to kind of deconstruct those and create positive beliefs, but also this sense of agency, because we've all been trained. Anyone who grew up in the post-World War II, or baby boomers and beyond, and the millennials and the Generation Z, everyone in this has been indoctrinated their whole lives to become passive consumers. We've all been trained to be passive consumers. And so the question could be, well, where can I get the right information? Just tell me, point me to where I can get the right information, which is still kind of a passive consumer approach. So I really do think we all have to embrace that agency. Now, I've developed a number of sources that I trust, that I know that are sources of various health information and products and so forth. And I know they have integrity. I know they're evidence-based. I know, and at the same time, they don't always agree. So I realize I still have to kind of do my own research. I have to, work with my own body and my own mind, and try this and try that. So I can come up with a spear of sources that I, more or less trust, because I trust they're doing good work, they have integrity. I still have to do my work to figure it out. There's no way around. If we really want to, have the kind of health and longevity that we're talking about, we have to embrace this quality of agency. So I'm really appreciating that you're emphasizing that. Your work has emphasized both natural solutions, natural products, and evidence-based. And I think that's just so important. And I wonder if you could talk about what you really mean by evidence-based products, and how do we know, how do we distinguish the evidence-based strategies, solutions, and products that are out there versus things that are maybe sound good, have a lot of marketing behind them, but have not really been tested?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, my mind just shot in 5 different directions that I want to answer that question. That's a great question, and first, let me note what you brought up again. Your previous answer, that you have a lot of sources that you have worked yourself to find that you can trust. It's a wonderful thing to be able to find someone, I hope, like me, and certainly like you, for other people. Because if you have enough trust, then you can check out what I have done all of this research on and what you have done this research on. And I will say this. 8 times out of 10, everyone listening, may agree. It's okay not to agree sometimes. It's okay if you recommend a product or something, Fleet, and 9 times out of 10 people love it, but some people might not, because we are different, of course. But that's no reason not to trust. We all know that. And regarding knowledge and natural health and evidence based, the beautiful thing is that we collectively, as this research community, have a pretty clear line in on all of the most essential steps that people need to take to look, feel their best, avoid disease, even overcome many diseases, and live long. We have a pretty clear view. We're at the point now where there's a lot of fine points, and there will be new discoveries forever, right? I mean, of course, and that's a wonderful thing. And there's a lot of fine point disagreements. I see a lot of arguments erupt over small points, and I'm like, okay, well, that's fun for you, fine, but I hope you're taking the big step and encouraging others to take the big step behind that. Should you eat olive oil, and how much? Is it bad or good? Things like that. It's just like, that's kind of missing the point. The point is, you take the big essential steps, and you'll be okay if it's not great to eat olive oil, but you should be, or you should be, but you're not. You'll be okay if you're taking, the bigger picture steps. So about evidence, well, again, I have been immersed. I'm a geek. I actually enjoy white papers and all this dense research, and I have enjoyed it for decades now. And I can state that I would never believe even most of the so-called research studies related to anything pharmaceutical, because you dig into that research and you will often, if not almost always, find out that it's funded directly or indirectly by the pharmaceutical company or companies that benefit from it. I'm very skeptical of research that touts a specific brand of food for the very same reasons. However, there are wonderful people in research institutions, and they're a vast minority, doing research on things come to mind like herbs and spices and vegetables and fruits and exercise that have no gain, no connection. And I'm like, well, man, I am so happy these people still exist. They're not getting big funding. They're not in it for any money, unlike a lot of the researchers who are funded by, pharma, for example. And so you have to be able to determine source of information when you're looking at things. And intent is a huge one. With that, research is exactly what it states. If there's one study showing something, and then what type of study and the extent of that study. If there's one study, it suggests something pretty good. If there's 10, it's suggesting something really good. If there's hundreds or thousands, you better believe it. And then the ultimate wonderful litmus test. And what does antiquity say about it? Because here's a beautiful thing I've seen over the decades. So many concepts from antiquity, from ancient forms of medicine, all of a sudden become all the rage because science showed what? It's true. They were right for the most part about this stuff, whatever it may be. Turmeric, certain fruits, amla or Indian gooseberry comes to mind. So many different things that different cultural medicine institutions embraced for eons. Then when you see studies start showing they were right, you could pretty much be sure, hey, they're onto something there. I brought up Indian gooseberry. Indian gooseberry amla is highly embraced and has been for eons in the Ayurvedic medicine culture. This is just an example for folks, and it's not on the radar. I mean, many people listening here right now are going to be like, "What are you even talking about? What is an Indian gooseberry amla?" Well, it's a sour berry. It's hard to eat because it's so sour, so astringent, but it is simply sky high in antioxidants, including, for example, vitamin C and others that have a massive positive impact, on inflammation. It's great consuming it internally. It's great consuming it on your skin, where it boosts collagen levels and more in your skin, and leads to much better looking skin, and so forth. This is just one example I'm talking about. Is that when antiquity, when ancient times embrace something, and then science digs in and says, yep, 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 you can be pretty darn sure the evidence can be trusted on that thing. And that's the kind of evidence I like to put out there most of all.
Absolutely. And I know you've spoken a lot about uh, the toxins that can really lead to disease and impact our lives in negative. Both toxins that could be in the environment and the food, but also mental toxins. And and so I wonder if you could talk about a little bit about that, so that we can kind of see what we're up against, and then how we can embrace a lifestyle and choices that are going to maybe limit our exposure to toxins, but also then get some of the antitoxins and the nutrients that can override that exposure that we have.
Right. Great question again. So, well, certainly incorrect beliefs about aging are a massive mental toxin. There's more, there's a lot more. In fact, again, spreading that concept out wider, so many people rightfully pay close attention to insights about healthy diet and healthy exercise choices, for example. And the big issues out there, the big problems regarding poor diet that are so pervasive, and lack of exercise, sitting too much, those are not really problems. Those are byproducts of the big problem. And the big problem really is mental/emotional, if you will, toxins. And what I mean by that is not just this perception of aging. We are the biggest enemy to our health is not out there, it's within us. It's inside of us, most of us, many of us, to some extent, all of us. And that is starts with, I guess, the one word I would say is fear. If you don't feel very safe, including with yourself, and loving with yourself, starting safe and loving with yourself, and therefore safe and loving with the rest of the world. Again, you've got a huge barrier, and you can eat as right as possible, exercise. You are still bound to experience health issues that you should not experience. The biggest toxin of all, again, is kind of already inside most of us. You'll never completely eliminate, and that's okay. That's not the point. The point is to become aware of it and work toward reducing it. A word comes to mind: forgiveness. And people hear this and they nod and they're like, yeah. And then many of them ignore that concept after a short discussion and want to go find what's the best thing I should eat, what's the pill I should take. But it's huge. Inside your heart, if you don't have forgiveness for yourself for something, or someone else, if you don't have that, you're going to be hard pressed to really improve your health in any significant ways. These are internal or mental emotional toxins that are bigger than anything else out there in terms of stopping you from achieving healthy aging and longevity, extending the length and quality of your life. So I want to note that. Now, in a physical sense, I do want to state, let me make this statement real quickly. So chronic stress and physical toxicants, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we'll look back on these times, and those two issues will be recognized. They're not quite enough yet. Will be recognized as the worst issues that we face, true epidemics of our time. Chronic stress, anxiety, and all that contributes to it, and then physical toxicants that are in absolutely everything we're surrounding ourselves with these days, from cosmetics, personal care products, of course, foods, our water, municipal water supplies, which doesn't even test for most of them, the air, especially inside homes, and so forth. These are going to be recognized as the worst problems that our current society has faced. And there's not enough awareness of either of those. So the chronic stress is, again, more so that mental, emotional stress. And it starts with the basis of fear. You are afraid of something when you experience anxiety and chronic stress. And on the physical side, that is lack of awareness. And everyone says, well, they're everywhere. What am I going to do about it? Well, you're never going to eliminate all of them. That's not the point. The point is there are certain areas where it's very important to reduce. And the beautiful thing on both of these fronts, the mental, emotional toxins and the physical toxicants, is just reduction of them makes a tremendous difference to your health and longevity, not to mention your energy levels and your joy.
I'm glad you're pointing to the internal work because I mean there is so much we can do to reduce our exposure to toxins, physical toxins in our food, the environment, the water, the air, and so forth. And then healthy diet, exercise, breathing, all the things we can do. But there's that internal work. I share a bit of your experience growing up in an alcoholic family myself, and so many of us are sitting on completely unprocessed, undealt with grief, anger, even rage, and we haven't even started to work to get to where we could forgive ourselves, and this can really impact our lives, even if we're doing a lot of the right things. If we haven't done that internal work, so I really appreciate that you pointed to that, to doing the work to heal. To deal with and heal our past, whatever it is, to be able to forgive ourselves, to forgive our parents, to forgive our grandparents. Now, forgiving them often means getting permission to be angry to begin with, right? To
Yep.
acknowledge what really happened, to acknowledge the things that we should have received that we didn't, the things that we did receive that we shouldn't have, to acknowledge those, have our feelings about them, but then to find our way into forgiveness. We have to kind of clear up that internal environment, and then we're going to find it so much easier because often, even though we know about all the good things we need to do, we don't find ourselves doing it. Or it's one step forward, two steps back, or at best two steps forward, one step back. And we find ourselves, even though we have good information, behaving in ways that are to our own detriment. And a lot of that, I think, is driven because we haven't done that internal work, and we're still dealing with so much internal conditioning and fear and anxiety and unprocessed grief and anger and so forth. So I'm really glad that you point to that internal work. I think it's incredibly important. So, I mean, this may sound like a big challenge to all of us, but again, it's like if we want to thrive in life, it's about accepting the agency that we need to do our internal work, and then we need to get intelligent about how we're engaging in life and what we're consuming and so forth.
Yeah, right. Well, heal your past and also heal your present. Not only is it past, issues, including anger perhaps at yourself, certainly others, as you noted. It's also present issues, often that come about, Fleet, because we don't have that. Control, that's a big word, but control over our emotions versus them controlling us. Now, here's one, a little, people don't necessarily love me when I bring this one up, but nonetheless, I believe it's true. And, again, based on a lot of research, what I've seen is confirmation bias. Today, not for anything that happened in the past, but there's so many people who are very angry at the other side. We know this from politics. It's not just in politics, but there is a lot of side taking today. I'm not going to speak for you, but I can tell you over the course of years and decades for myself, I haven't seen it to this level in my lifetime that it is today. I think I heard during the United States Civil War, it might have been, equatable to that perhaps, but there's a lot of side taking and anger, and that side is wrong and that side is wrong, and if they don't agree with me, they're bad people, and that's stressful. And guess what that is? That's fear. That's at its very basis. Again, that is the fear we're talking about. Confirmation bias means you gravitate toward whatever confirms your current beliefs. That's what confirmation bias is. And one of the most important, wonderful things we can be as students, not believe that we know everything. And I try every single day, and I have little quotes to remind me to do so, putting my student cap on and saying, I could be wrong. Could be wrong about everything. I could be wrong. And it's a hard thing. It's very humbling, and it's hard for my ego who wants to be right. But people are taken advantage of because of confirmation bias. And there are institutions, media, and I'll state these by name, Fox News on one side, CNN and MSNBC, for example, on the other so-called side, and so forth. People get the idea. These are for-profit institutions laughing all the way to the bank by yanking people around with confirmation bias. We're going to make them angry, even angrier at the other side. That's what they do. I have been inside of media organizations like that. That is what they do consciously. It's very profitable for these institutions who are beholden to all of their stockholders. That's what they're doing to you. So there's present anger and fear inside of us that, as we talked about earlier, is being manipulated further. And it's awareness of that kind of thing, not just trauma that happened in our past, but that is a form of trauma, really. When you think about it, watching the media it never feels great later. You don't watch these shows and then you walk outside and man, that was refreshing and uplifting to watch the latest Fox News or CNN. No, it's not. And that's your body telling you something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. And maybe I should reduce that. And if I am going to partake in that, be very conscious of what they're really trying to do to me. That's a traumatic event as well.
Yeah, we could do a whole nother
Mm,
conversation, a whole nother summit on getting out of our confirmation bias bubbles, I think, which
yes.
are really doing us a lot of harm. It's helpful to know that the world of marketing also understands the psychology of confirmation bias extremely well, and obviously makes use of that to manipulate us. So coming back to the need for agency, and I really loved what you said about having that beginner's mind, that student mind, that you're willing to step back. Maybe I've got this whole thing wrong, continually having the humility to look and take a deeper look and really, have a kind of a healthy scientific mind, of a kind of pure scientific mind. I'm really, I want to know the truth. I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep taking an objective assessment of how I'm experiencing what I'm in, having that kind of mindset. It's like we've all been trained to want to, well, can somebody else do that for me? Right. That's too hard of work. Right. Let me do. Well, then we're going to get what we get. And a lot of those sources, even some of the ones that are, marketing the natural stuff, are going to be using that psychology to manipulate us in ways that are not really in our best interest. So let's talk more about what we can do in line with this agency. You mentioned before that our brain can be our best friend or our worst enemy, right? Our
Mhm.
brain is a highly conditioned, highly programmed supercomputer, but
Yep.
fortunately, we are conscious beings, and we have our executive function and the top-down part of our brain, the conscious brain, where we can be literally reprogramming our own brain. And so part of this is that we understand neuroplasticity, that the brain is continually growing and changing and can grow and thrive throughout our lifespan. And there's a lot of things we can do. Everything we do that helps the body be healthy will help the brain be healthy. But then with intentionality, we can also rewire the brain, rewire our beliefs to support all the things we're talking about here, about health and well-being and longevity and health span and so forth. So I wonder if you could talk about the role of neuroplasticity in healthy aging.
You're right, right. Again, great question. And this may seem initially to contradict everything I just said, but it doesn't. It complements it. It's a two-way street. You just alluded to that. What I mean is, you do need to address, these mental emotional aspects. However, by addressing the physical aspects, even if you don't necessarily start by addressing the mental slash emotional, you are building, it's like a workout to better be able to address the mental, emotional, and get control. What I mean is, for example, exercise. So you talk about neuroplasticity. And from a physical perspective, there's probably nothing that research shows is more effective for neuroplasticity, for increasing essentially your brain power, the neurons in your brain, which is wonderful news. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't even think you could do this. Uh, Many didn't, at least. And now, again, science research has shown that's not true. You certainly can, to a physical level, basically increase your brain power. And capacity, including ability to focus more. This is what I mean, by the way, when I say these ought to be the best years of your life, even physically, because we can do that. So exercise is shown. If you're incapable at this point of addressing a lot of deep-seated emotional challenges, in layman's terms, go exercise. Start exercising because it's working out, it's increasing your ability to properly think and equip you to better think through those things that are stopping you. So that's what I mean. It's a two-way street. A lot of the work that you have really helped put on the map, and rightfully so. And then a lot of the more physical approaches, diet, exercise, certainly eliminating physical toxicants, they work the other way, and we're holistic, right? And so it's both of these is the solution, and you brought that up. So I'd say, if I had to pick one thing, to do to increase neuroplasticity, it would be exercise. But you don't have to pick one thing, because there's many things. Physical exercise, there's of course, mindfulness and meditation. That's the other one thing. So there's not one thing. I'm cheating already because there's a bunch of one things. Mindfulness, meditation, exercise, clearly diet in terms of as important what you avoid as what you put in. I will say on the dietary front, I say I can go deep into any of these, and I'm passionate, as you could tell, and I want to. But in very brief, you've heard this one before, and it's very true. Reduce those processed foods, those refined grains, the sugars. Not only are they an enemy to your heart and every other organ in your body, they're a huge enemy to your brain and your ability to regenerate your brain. They're a huge enemy. I don't need to talk much more about that. I think that's been covered well, but if I do, I will. And then on the flip side, people say increase vegetables and fruits, and that's true. What you're really wanting to increase, one of the things is antioxidants. Human beings today in this country, and probably I could confidently say most of the world today, the Western world for sure, do not eat not only nearly enough fruits, veggies, herbs, spices, grains, seeds, but range. People forget range. Range is just as important as volume. And people get caught, Fleet, in a rut of eating the same 7, 8, 9, 10 different fruits and veggies and herbs and spices over and over and over. That is not doing you any good. It's not doing you bad, okay, but it's not doing you nearly as good as if you put 30 different or so fruits, veggies, herbs, spices into your diet routinely. Why? Because they contain a wide range of the antioxidants and these other compounds that, since we're talking about brain, greatly impact neuroplasticity, not to mention a bunch of other health benefits in the body. So that's diet. And then, of course, sleep. And I can go deep there too if you want, but I think we've heard that, and it's vital. I can give tips on that front too. And then the most interesting one for neuroplasticity, interesting to me, fascinating to me, is exercising your brain. And what that means is people have heard do Sudoku, how do you pronounce that? Sudoku, and puzzles and stuff. Okay, that's level one. But really, really what's important is to have new experiences and engage in new learning activities that go well beyond that. Challenge your brain, especially if you can incorporate your brain and your body with more complicated new learning activities. Good old examples, learning a new language, going to a dance class is wonderful. Why? Because it's a mental activity and a physical activity where you have to do some complicated steps. Fantastic. Gardening can be really strong for this, especially if you're a aggressive, I call it gardener, meaning someone who's digging a lot, stepping around all these plants, be they vegetables, fruits, whatever, or flowers. Gardening is great. Just engage in new hobbies. That the more they challenge your brain and your body, the merrier. We're seeing that not only is it fun, and fun is vital for healthy aging and longevity, but it's very key to neuroplasticity.
I wonder if we could, I love the just really global and holistic way you've covered that territory. And again, we could go into great depth in any of those areas, but
Yeah.
There are these things we can do and pay attention to that will increase neuroplasticity. And then if we have clear intentionality, we embrace that sense of agency, and we're using positive affirmations and other things, then we can literally reprogram our brain in ways that are going to support going in a direction we want, and we'll find ourselves less in that one step forward, two steps back, because our brain will start cooperating with us, right? And
Right.
so you pointed to a lot of things. And again, you're absolutely right. There is nothing that increases neuroplasticity more than exercise. I've often used the example with people, often in your gyms, your workout studios, they have this long row of elliptical machines or recumbent bicycles or so forth, and then they have all the television screens up there, right? So get on there and get your heart pumping, and then you're watching reality TV. Probably not a good idea. Or the news, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Put on a nice nature movie or something, right?
Put on
Because
this event, actually.
put
Put
on
this
this
event
event.
up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the spiritual dimension of all this. You use the term sacred spaces and protecting the sacred space of your body and your mind. And that sense of, spirituality will mean different things to different people. But, it is, we can really get into the neurobiology, and we can get into the physicality of it, and we can talk about mindset. And there is we all know, we sense there's some greater thing that we tap into that gives meaning and purpose to our life and gives, kind of the wind at our back a little bit, if we're tuned into something sort of deeper than just our limited self, so to speak. So I wonder if you could talk about the spiritual dimension of healthy aging and longevity, and this idea of sacred spaces and protecting sacred spaces.
Absolutely. And it's clearly vital. And it does not matter, like you noted, what your beliefs, may be about where we come from, if you're a member of any different sort of church. At the end of the day, it is a miracle, really, that we're here, right? At all. And I think many, if not most people, can identify with moments in their life, which I encourage you to go back to if you've lost them, where you get this sense of, oh, wow, I am part of this something much bigger, things which I'm fascinated by, I'm honored, touched, humbled by, in awe of. Awe is a big word. And to have that big feeling, go out at night, go back and lay under the stars if you're able to see them to get that feeling. Just go out in nature somewhere, anything. That's just one example that comes to mind that inspires this so-called awe and this feeling of connection to a greater thing. And then, you can also through often, mindfulness, simply focus on your body and your being, not just your body, but your being, and just realize it's amazing. It's amazing on every level that you are here, and find ways back to that awe is so important. The sense of something greater and how amazing this is and how grateful you think about that. We talk about miracles. It's a miracle that I'm sitting here talking to you. It's a miracle you woke up this morning and that I woke up this morning and that we were born and so on and so forth. And again, there's scientific basis to this. If this just sounds fluffy to any listener, I'm a very science person, but uh, there is much greater. The one thing I could tell you science has found most often than anything else is that we don't have the answers. It always opens the door to new questions, right? And so it will be because we're human and we don't have all those answers. And so when you get that recognition, you also recognize how sacred you are. And by you, again, I mean your physical body, but your entire being, your mental and emotional health. For the sake of this discussion, mental, emotional, physical health. And really, your ability to live long and thrive while living long boils down to what you allow into that sacred space and what you strive to keep out of that sacred space. And also, to some extent, what you strive to get out that might already be inside of you that doesn't really belong there. We talked a lot about that. There are very physical toxicants that you want to eliminate. And there's, as we discussed a lot, certainly some mental, emotional toxins that you want to get out of your body. So what are you allowing into your being? What are you striving to keep out? What do you need to work on to potentially get out? It's a very oversimplified, admittedly, but a healthy way to start by looking at your being, because that is your sacred space. This is what you have dominion over is your being, and it's a gift, and a constant work toward taking the time to reestablish with that fact is important, which again is done through different types of mindfulness. So I say to people, go out there and do nothing and it's some of the most important work you can do if you just go, again, my example, because it works for me, wander deep into nature, lay out under the stars, or even no stars, or one star at night. Do nothing. It's some of the most important work you can do that'll help you reconnect to that awe and to how sacred you are.
Well, Brian, this has been incredibly illuminating, and there are so many different rabbit holes we could have gone down with you, and I could have interviewed you for any one of the days of this summit. Today, we're focused on longevity and healthy aging, and so I want to ask in a moment where people can find out more about your work, but I also want to come back to where you really started our conversation, that there really isn't any reason, any biological reason why most of us can't live well into our 90s or beyond. And not only that, that we cannot do that, no reason we can't do that in a healthy way where we're enjoying our life and have quality of life into our 90s and beyond. And I think that's a powerful message. And that this, as we, that old, I mentioned earlier that I've been guilty of saying that thing, youth is wasted on the young. Well, that's based on the idea that we develop more and more wisdom as we grow older. We develop more and more discernment. So it'd be nice to have the health to go along with that. And what you're saying is we can have the health to go along with that and be vital and thriving into later years of life. So it's such a powerful message and such a positive affirmation on what life is all about. So thank you so much for that. So where can people find out more about your work?
Sure. Super summary, go to theartofantiaging.com. While you're there, sign up if you're so inclined for the newsletter. We're always giving away some really exceptional. We put a lot of work into these bonus reports, and we change them up. So check out whatever free bonus we're giving when you do sign up for the newsletter. If you are so inclined, it's all free, of course. Check out our blog. I'm proud of that because we pour a lot of work into exceptional articles. Again, evidence based on topics that really matter to people. That's theartofantiaging.com, and then we touched on toxicants in so many products. This includes cosmetics and personal care to an extent that most people still would not believe. So that's the real short story version of why I started Purity Woods, which is just entirely USDA certified organic skincare, as well as a couple key types of supplements for healthy aging now. Supplements are also typically loaded with junk that you don't want. So for that, if you're interested, go to puritywoods.com. And yeah, thank you. You did such a beautiful job, by the way, of summing up what I had started saying at the start. I could tell that you have poured extensive heart effort yourself into this. I love what you're doing here, Fleet, by the way. You're a gift. Speaking of gifts, you are a gift, my friend. So thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for being part of our summit. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And I really encourage our audience to go check out your work. So thank you.